Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. In this episode, I'm joined by Adam Turner, who's the founder of GVC, Global Veterinary Careers. GVC are one of the world's most leading veterinary careers staffing firms across the globe. They have offices in the United Kingdom, in Australia, and a presence out in the US as well. They are one of the best companies in the world when it comes to this sector, super niche. And in this particular episode, we talk all about the power of the phone. We talk about sales culture, we talk about what's happened in recruitment, why there's been a bit of a shift of people coming into the industry and not necessarily being phone first, but we also are quite open-minded that there are different approaches to do recruitment. But of course, the being on the phone, right, is the most important thing. So we really deep dive into that. So we've got so much value packed into this episode, a few laughs as well. So I think you guys are going to really enjoy. Before I sign off on the introduction, as you may have seen on LinkedIn and heard me talk a little bit about on the podcast, the past couple of weeks for Milo has been absolutely exceptional. So we've had about 9 demos. All 9 customers are interested in joining our early access. So very, very quickly, because people have seen me wearing this t-shirt and heard me talk about it, but there are probably people out there going, what is this Milo Charles keeps talking about? So Milo essentially is a digital sales coach. So when I have been an L&D person in-house or external, I typically sit next to a recruiter. I help them plan and prep for a sales call. I might interject during it depending if they like that, but certainly after, I'll give them feedback and I'll coach them through how they can improve things like objection handling, what their intro is, the questions, how to probe to information gather, etc. Well, we've basically built a tool that replicates what I do to make recruiters better at being on the phone and doing video calls and face-to-face meetings. So we are utilizing technology to make sure people are really good at the things that make people good in recruitment, which is the human side of things, which is being on the phone, which is one of the main topics of conversation for today's episode. So if you are interested, we've only got a few spots for the early access, if I'm honest, but we're looking to launch the product in October time. So look, I can talk about this all day. As you can imagine, I'm super passionate about it, and I think it's going to make a huge impact on the industry. So that's enough from me. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this episode. Let me know what your biggest takeaways are. Finally, as well, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. The show's growing really nicely. And let's get into this week's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast with your host, Charles Kiriakou. Today, I'm joined by Adam Turner. Adam, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today. How are we doing?
Very well indeed. Thank you for having me on.
No worries at all. Well, look, we've got some really exciting topics to get into today, some of which I'm really, really passionate about. But before we do so, Adam, for people that may or may not know who you are, what you do, your market, etc., just give us a bit of an intro.
Absolutely. Thank you, Charles. I'm Adam Turner. I've been working in veterinary recruitment since 2007. So 19 years now, if I'm not mistaken, which I guess puts me in the bracket of potentially veteran of the game these days. I'm founder of Global Veterinary Careers. We're a specialist veterinary recruitment business operating across permanent and local markets from 3 main offices that we've got here in the UK, where I'm based. We've got another office in US, in Dallas, and Australia as well, covering those markets. We work exclusively in the veterinary market, which means we go really deep in that one space to become specialists and not wide across many verticals, which that focus has allowed us to become, hopefully, the go-to guys within our niche.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, look, one of the biggest topics that I talk to a lot of founders about on just general sort of calls is the idea that recruitment, for me at least, has always been a people business. It's always been a relationship business, but it's always been a sales business, right? It's like my first ever day of recruitment, my boss sat me down and said, this is a telephone sales role. You're going to spend pretty much your entire career on the phone, speaking to people and selling, right? But I genuinely feel that's kind of shifted in the past few years, maybe since post-COVID, for example. A lot of recruitment businesses are different when it comes to that, like being on the phone and stuff. What do you think has changed?
I think a lot of things have changed. And I've been trying to put my finger on this because we're no different. We've experienced exactly the scenario that you're describing there. When I first joined my first job in recruitment in 2007, I had pretty much the only target I had every day was 50 calls. Didn't care who they were, what they were, but you were sort of given that as a guiding metric, and then you had to find your own way and make sure they're relevant, of course. And everything else flowed from there. And I appreciate that is a lifetime ago, and there are so many other platforms that people can get good results from and do get good results from. But I think the main thing that I'm taking from this, I don't think it's a recruitment problem. I honestly think it is, without going too deep, more of a generational problem, an issue. I've got a 15-year-old son. If I were to phone him now, he wouldn't answer, but he would message me back on WhatsApp within 2 minutes saying, "What do you want?"
Mm.
And I think that plays into what we're seeing in the workplace. And I think it's that part that people want, that instant gratification, but it's also delving into the rejection part and being pushed out of comfort zone, I feel. And what I mean by that is that it's quite easy for someone to send a group email to 100 participants, recipients, sorry, LinkedIn message the same, and they never know they're getting rejected. And if they get one bite from that response that's positive, they think, "Hey, brilliant, I know what I'm doing. This works." Not knowing they've been ghosted, deleted, ignored, whatever scenario may be, by the vast majority of that distribution list, but they've got that one win they're hanging on to. That we've said to many of the recruiters, okay, make 100 phone calls and you're going to get one response. They tell me it's a waste of time. I'm not doing that. So I think it's maybe both of those parts in tandem. And yeah, as I mentioned, there are more platforms as well.
Yeah, and we'll certainly talk about the AI generation, the AI revolution we're going through, the amount of tech that's there to support recruiters. Like I barely had anything when I first started, but something you mentioned there, which I think is really pertinent, is the fact that, look, I'm a younger millennial, like my brother's on the cusp of Gen Z millennial, but when we were at school and we finished school, we'd go knock for our friends on the door, go and sit down with their family to have dinner, etc. We have a takeaway. My mum would say, call the chicken shop, go make sure you place an order, etc. Whereas these days, and I've said this countless times on the podcast, like I could be in my office and not leave this office all day. I could get food delivered. I could get an Uber to my friend's house. Like I could get everything I ever wanted without having to be on the phone. But what I find interesting is that, as you can imagine, I've worked with a ton of Gen Z recruitment consultants, a lot of which, unfortunately, are very reluctant to get on the phone because it's very easy to just spam a bunch of in-mails and, mass spec out, etc. But you do get some that are animals that really want to get on the phone. What do you think, like, as a founder, as a leader of a recruitment business, like, how, I guess my first question is, how do you identify the ones that, yes, they're in that generation, but they want to get on the phone versus the ones that don't, for example?
I think it's impossible to identify that. And it comes down to your hiring process and the person questions that you're answering and delving into. And, a bit of a cliche, but trying to really delve into someone's why, who they're trying to impress, who they're trying to prove wrong half the time. And that's when you can sense a little bit of the fire in their belly, almost, which is difficult to suss out in sometimes an hour interview, or depending on your hiring stages and processes, a couple of stages within that. And anyone can blag for an hour in an interview and say, yeah. So it is difficult, but we've always been of the mindset that, yeah, we want to identify those people, but then we want to allow them the platform to go and prove us right or wrong in some cases. And I think, that analogy you shared of youth, I think that is correct. And some of that has been lost. I remember the fear when you would be out playing and you see the pile of bikes somewhere outside someone's house. You think, oh, I know my mates are all in there. I don't really lad's house that they're in, or their parents, but they're taking the courage to go knock on the door.
Yeah.
So are they coming out to play? No, they're not. And it's like, oh my God, okay.
Yeah.
So we've unknowingly, subconsciously, been putting ourselves out there, without sounding like fossils and dinosaurs too much, but from a young age, and getting used to that. Whereas I think my son wouldn't do that now at all.
Well, I saw a funny video on Instagram a few months ago of this dad trying to teach his son what it was like when he was a kid growing up in like the 80s, 90s and stuff. And he was like in the house, like knocking on a door. And he would just say like, and then what would happen is my friend's mum or dad would answer the door and then let me in. And the kid's looking at him going, why would you do that? You just text him. And he was like, well, we didn't have mobiles. He was like, what? You didn't have mobiles? It's like, we had to go and knock for our friends physically. And the kid was just completely baffled. And I genuinely think that, like, That is certainly something because, like I said before, we had to call everything. Like now, I don't have to do anything. Like even the doctors, right? I have to go and collect my ADHD meds once a month. I still call them because I'm old-fashioned to make sure they've got it, and there's historically been issues getting the medication. There's an app for it now. Do you know what I mean? I could just download the app and then just go, cool, it's there. I can just go. But I'm just old. I'm just like it's quicker. I'll just do it on the phone and stuff. But I think that's lost at the moment. Hey guys, quick one before we jump back into the episode. If you are a recruiter who feels like half your week disappears into admin, follow ups, data cleaning, and jumping between several different tools, then listen up because this episode is officially sponsored by Sourcewell. Sourcewell is the recruitment productivity platform, and I don't just mean another tool that you'll forget to use, I mean the tool that actually gives you your time back. You can run your entire desk in one place. Outreach, sourcing, data enrichment, multi-step email and LinkedIn sequences, inbox management, and even call notes. It's all there, synced, automated, and according to their stats, recruiters using Sourcewell see 56% higher response rates, double the pipeline, and approximately save around 8 hours of admin every single week. If you're like me, admin as a recruiter is the devil, and this productivity platform really helps you save a load of time. So reach out to Sourcewell, go to sourcewell.com. It's a fantastic platform. I've used it myself. I really believe in it, and I'm super grateful for them sponsoring the podcast. Let's get back into the episode.
Yeah, I agree. And I use apps for multiple things, as we all do. And it's great when they work really well. But then as soon as there's an issue and you want to speak to someone about your phone contract or change the tariff or something mundane like that, and you think, okay, you can't find the number half the time. It's buried, and they give you a chatbot or frequently asked questions to try and diagnose a problem yourself. But sometimes you just want to speak to people, typically when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
Which then it becomes a difficult part.
Yeah.
And that's not...
You've just given me a funny little memory from like 2 days ago where something happened, and I was like on back-to-back meetings all morning, and I just said to my wife, I was like, look, you're not working today. I know you're looking after the baby, or the baby. She's 1 year old now, but I was like, you're looking after Millie. Just call them. And she was like, oh, but every single time puts me through to an AI agent. I was like, just call them. Adam, I'm not even joking. I'm in my office upstairs. I could hear her downstairs screaming every 2 minutes. I just want to speak to someone. And I'm just like, oh my God. I was like, said to my business partner, give me a minute. Let me just go and check she's all right. Gone downstairs. She was like, every bloody time. Is it this or is it that? It's that. Okay, cool. We'll see if we can put you through to someone. One more question. And she was on the phone for half hour. So I honestly, that, by the way, I know we're digressing here, but that really, really jars me when I just like, I have a problem. Can I just speak to someone? It just solves it quicker. Go on, sorry.
It does, and I think that's the world that we have been in, certainly since reference the pandemic like it was yesterday, years ago now, but we still reference it like it was yesterday. And during those 2, 3, 4 years after then, the world became really transactional, I feel. And from what I'm seeing and hearing and feeling at the minute, I hope that we are coming out the other side, and people are rising to think, actually, I want that human touch, because within that we've lost all community as well, in workspace for a period of time with a lot of remote work in town centres and everything such like. But also then everything we're doing is transactional, like I said. But then all the habits and activities we're doing every day is promoting those transactions. It's okay. You're asking, on the whatever platform, closed questions half the time, you're getting a response to that question only, maybe. And then you're losing the real art of identifying the problem, the pain point, the deeper rooted issue that is more than job title, location, salary, and all the rest of it, which you can't replace without building those relationships.
Yeah, I'm really, really big on that. And I certainly feel that, what was it, 2022, when I don't know if your market was the same, but when I moved into L&D, I joined a tech recruitment agency. And I've said this many times on the podcast, like I was seeing recruiters sneeze at them and pull 5 jobs. They were like specking out to the entire database and then pulling 7 or 8 jobs. I was like, this is mental. And then after, when the tech boom kind of slowed down a little bit, it became more normal, what I was used to, where it was a competitive space, it was quite saturated. You need to differentiate yourself. And recruiters were getting quite lazy, to be honest. And this wasn't just the company I was at. I heard this story time and time again, where recruiters just weren't really necessarily following a process. It was too easy for them. And that's, I guess, like a little like mini segue into this topic. During that time when the market was so buoyant and people were over reliant on mass emails, mass in-mails, for example. Do you think, or what impact do you think that has had on sales culture and recruitment in general?
It's, in my opinion, it shifted the narrative of what good looks like. And we were guilty of this as well, and we still are to certain respects. It's became quite difficult to manage as well and set those expectations because, I'm fairly old school in my upbringing in recruitment, and I know what I like and what I don't like. But it's quite difficult to say, okay, you need to maintain your equal levels of BD, relationship building, candidate prospecting, and sourcing, and so on. When someone's going, Adam, I've got 20 jobs here that, crying out for candidates. I'm like, yeah, I know, I can see that. And I
Mm,
know if we fill those 20 jobs, you're going to be in a really good spot. And it was for a prolonged period of going, but what if? And that but what if, they vanished and dried up, lasted for too long for me to look credible in saying that.
mm,
And then, it might be different for different markets, but where are we now? 24, maybe 25, where it was a very different market and those
mm.
jobs did dry up. I'm going, okay, well, this is why. But then maybe some of our workforce change as well. And then you had never been used to that. So then it's having to try and then teach them what we perceive to be the 101, the basics. Um, but it's time to teach a whole new generation of workforce these areas of the job. It's all well and good saying, you need to go and do BD. And they go, yeah, okay, I completely agree. And they go, what is that?
Yeah.
I think that's not, hey, Mr. Client, are you hiring? That's not BD.
Mm,
It's looking for something that isn't that instant gratification that I mentioned, adding some value, knowing that you could reach out to the same person, 7 to 10 times before you get a realistic conversation or segue into some form of partnership.
mm.
I think, was it yourself shared a story with me that it took a couple of years that one came back around to you
Yep.
fairly recently. It's these sort of things. It's just those steps, building that funnel. That I think day and age at the minute, people want something there and then.
Yeah. That's certainly a massive problem right now where people expect things immediately. And when I go through business development with recruiters and solo founders and stuff, and I always break it down in the most simplistic terms that you do have short-term BD, i.e. your lead chasing, etc. It's not really the best way, let's be honest, because you're kind of joining the race really late. But if you desperately need work right now, then it's strategically wise to go after companies that you know are actively hiring. But the best roles, as you know, are the ones that you build that relationship. My little analogy is planting seeds in various different little pots and then watering them and see which relationships flourish, right? And those typically end up being the better clients because when you have that fourth or fifth catch up with them, every single month, and they come back and say, oh, there's a role coming up, it's going to be signed off in a couple of weeks. Likelihood is there's not going to be many other agencies working on that. But that's a mindset, isn't it? That I think you and I, that's been in this industry for quite some time, have been taught from an early recruitment age that it's not about getting the win right this second. And don't get me wrong, there are some agencies that are purely just transactional. That's cool, whatever. But how do we shift the mindset then with people coming into businesses that perhaps are in that younger generation or don't have any recruitment experience that have almost been programmed and conditioned with today's society to expect things right now? Like, I need a new light, Amazon, Bosch, there it is, it's there by tonight. How do we shift their mindset in recruitment to go, actually, we have to think long term here?
Yeah, not to immediately jump on your light analogy there, but we've got to shine the light on a more varied way of working. Not just because I've spent best part of 2 decades working in recruitment, but I think it's a brilliant industry to work in. You're working with people; they are so varied, got so many stories. Yes, they're the most unreliable product in the world, and it'd be much easier to be working any other industry going. Um, but it gives you that fulfillment and it gives you that community that I think people are missing. It gives you those connections, and yes, ultimately your clients, they want you to deliver. And if you don't, that relationship can only go on for so long. But more often than not, it's not about the success. Yes, it pays the bills, keeps the lights on, keeps the client happy, keeps your candidate happy, gets reputation, everything that we know that builds and compounds over time. But realistically, and it's not trying to generalize every single client, every industry, but more often than not, if there is a hire that's been made, they don't really care where it comes from. But what they will remember is, okay, Adam checked in with me to check how my son's sports day was a couple of weeks ago. or actually called back and asked how my holiday to Greece was, or anything like these small moments that are innocuous in a conversation that you make a note, you train yourself to have a good memory by logging those key moments, and then the follow up. That's what people remember. And then it breaks down the barriers. You have a nice relationship, hopefully a mutual beneficial partnership. And then it grows from there. And hopefully then that client goes into another position elsewhere in a different company. You've got two companies from one. And I think that's what's really important, is trying to showcase that to the workforce, that the job that they've chosen to enter in the industry in recruitment is really varied. It's really rewarding. You meet a variety of different people from different countries, backgrounds, you name it, that it can be really interesting. But if you're just stuck in that transaction of, okay, job, this candidate fit that job, perfect, on to the next one, that can become quite boring, in my opinion, over a period of time.
Mm. Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I remember my first proper role in recruitment was locum nurses, RGN band fives, and something that my manager said to me that stood with me forever was that he was so impressed with my relationship building skills. And I always found it like when I moved into leadership, I remembered that because I thought, okay, he praised because he was very good at telling me where I was crap, by the way, very good at that. But I found that actually praising the positive behaviors, that's what really triggered and gone, actually, wow, if that's something I'm actually really good at, I'm just going to absolutely triple down on this aspect. And that really helped me in every single role, even to what I do now, of build. And I know it sounds cliche, and I know some people go, oh, relationships, whatever, but I've had this debate with people outside of recruitment, Adam, where I've seen people that do sales training outside of recruitment and they don't like the word relationships. And I don't know why, because I mean, technically I'm in rec tech sales now, so it's slightly different, but I still think relationships are the most important thing in recruitment. And
Yeah.
I've always found that by differentiating yourself to people, yes, you're adding value, yes, you're asking great questions, etc., but actually showing you care, actually showing, like
Mm.
to your analogy, how was your son's or your child's sports day? How was your holiday? Most recruiters, let's be real, Adam, most recruiters, when they're on the phone, even if the client said, "Oh, call me in 2 weeks when I'm back from Greece," probably won't mention that. And if they do, it's like, "Do you have a nice holiday? Yeah, sweet, cool." It's they're not actually showing they care. And in a people business, I think that's one of the most important things. And I think this is very important for both founders and recruiters listening to this, that just by actually showing you deeply care about someone, whether it's a candidate or client, immediately differentiates yourself to other recruiters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We say to our team internally, we've got to find the win-win. And that win isn't for us. That's for our client and candidate. Find a win-win they're both happy with. We win as a default byproduct of that. And it's then trying to get those sales through service more than anything else. And that builds and it's more sustainable. Yes, I think if we delved into just looking for the win for us, we'd see some short-term spikes
Hmm.
and probably higher than we have been at certain points in the past. But then they would be short-term. They wouldn't be long-term sustainable. And I'd much rather be in the latter category, that we are making a difference. We're caring about what we do, trying to dispel that narrative that gets labeled on recruiters sometimes. Of course, there are some people that play that game, but you get the most success from remaining in industry for a long time and longevity. You don't stay in a company or industry and create that longevity by offering a poor service, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. A guest that I had on several months ago, a lady called Sarah Leach, I think she did like a customer service type role when she was traveling in Australia and saw how poor the service was that that business was offering. And she went above and beyond. And when she got into recruitment, she realized that actually customer service and recruitment isn't really one of those things that recruitment businesses lead with. So her entire business strategy is we are going to deliver the best service in our market. And she's done phenomenally well with it. And I think that's something that for people listening, like if you can deliver a phenomenal service, even if it's a candidate you don't think you're going to place, even if it's a client that has an unrealistic JD, an unrealistic role, maybe a company you don't really think you're going to do a lot of business, but if you can offer a good service, that win-win methodology, like this is the thing I always talk about. It's a way to differentiate yourself big time. Um, One thing as well on the sales culture aspect, and similar to what we were just talking about, one thing that we did speak about when we last spoke was, and I've seen this time and time again, especially with trainee recruiters, where they'll go to like a little phone booth or they'll take calls and they'll kind of wander off away from people. I've got a couple of like, I guess I can understand a little bit when you're a trainee, it can be kind of daunting and stuff, but I'm sure you must have seen this in your career, in your business, etc. First question, I suppose, is like, why do you think that actually happens?
I think it's again, this part I don't put on a generation, not willing to throw off a generation. In that respect, I I think it's probably more of a cultural problem and what's being encouraged, what's being rewarded. I know, I do it on occasions. If there's a call, I want a bit of peace and quiet, and not some of the background noise and deal music going off and what have you, which
Yeah.
is part of the course. I'll duck into here where I am now and take it. Absolutely no problem with that. But I want the majority, of course, to be on a sales floor, as it were, and I want that to be hustling and bustling. And I think if I look back to my, I didn't have that option. I was on a big open plan floor, lots of big personalities. I was 21 years old, didn't know what I was doing. And if that was an option or remote working was an option, I wouldn't have lasted.
Mm,
When I went in there, and even when I was performing well at that business, I was by no means the best recruiter there, best salesperson. I just looked around and thought, okay, I like that part. I'm going to take that part and put my spin on it. And I was just a magpie. And I looked at the big hitters and thought, what I would give right now at 20 years old, no work experience, not many other options on the table, and what I wanted to do, I would, give anything to be on your desk right now. So I'm going to copy your habits. I'm going to make sure I arrive the same time you do. I don't know what you do at that point at 7:45 in the morning, but I'm going to be there and find out. And then I would just take little bits from everyone. And I think that's the greatness that happens when you're rubbing shoulders with people that you maybe feel a bit of imposter syndrome, feel inferior to. But yeah, that doesn't happen if you're taking calls away and not looking to hone your craft,
mm,
which I think is really important. I look at that about myself. This is the first podcast that I've ever done, to be
mm,
honest. And I think in the whole recruitment industry, I've probably shied away from situations like this,
mhm.
not because I've ever thought I haven't got value to add, um, but I've looked at it and thought, I'm still learning my craft, and I fully believe that. And I look at some of the people in the industry in different sections and think, well, those guys are the big hitters. They
Mm.
know far more than me, and maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome as well, as I mentioned. But then it's only been recently that I've thought, actually, I'm fairly comfortable thinking that I'm always going to feel like that. But that's the part that has got GVC where we are now to where we are, and I
Mhm.
think we'll continue our development and growth because I think we should all still be learning. We're trying to hone our craft, and that's by rubbing shoulders with people. I think starts on a sales floor and going back to our, recruiters with us in other companies in the industry. You've got to have that. You've got to have that
Mm.
environment and that
Yeah.
competitiveness. I think it's a competitive sport.
Yeah. Mate, there's so many little nuggets in there that I want to sort of dive into. I think the first thing that pops into my mind is that something that you said around it kind of it's a cultural thing. It starts from the top. If you're letting and especially if you're letting senior consultants just pop into a room and take every single call there, then a trainee consultant's going to be like, well, what one rule for them, one rule for me. Like it needs to be quite consistent. Granted, I've taken, Teams calls, etc., at my desk where deal music is going off and colleagues are dancing and celebrating and the client's gone, what the hell? Obviously, some calls you want to take away from your desk and stuff. There was something else, and it's just escaped my mind now. But yeah, no, the culture thing starting from the top is one of the most important things. I think the way it's articulated to people oh, that was it. I was going to talk about imposter syndrome, right? Sorry, but the way it's articulated to people, I think, is so important, right? So when I joined a company called Projectus, I was quite confident on the phone. I was one of those people that knew I was quite good at like, speaking with people on the phone and stuff. But because I knew nothing about my market, I got in my head and thought, I don't really know what I'm talking about. The way I qualified candidates was a contract way, so it was just pure closed questions, assumptive language, etc. And I started to get a bit in my head and a bit embarrassed at how poor I was in comparison to other people. But thankfully, because of the culture, my manager sat me down and said, mate, I want you to be on the phone as much as possible, and I don't want you to be afraid of doing bad calls because there's not really such a thing as a bad call for you right now because you're only going to get better. And if you have that mindset of every single time you make a call, ask me and I'll help you improve. And slowly but surely, every single time I was asking more open questions, etc., you get a fist bump from your manager. The managing director goes over, clicks his fingers like that, and goes, "Wow, that was an amazing call." And then slowly but surely, I was like, "Right, I'm a lot more confident." And then whenever we had new people come into the business, I was always saying to people, look, I've been in your shoes. And I think that's also very important as well, that if someone is quite shy to be on the first on the phone, the only one on the phone, is to let them know that, hey, you're not alone. We've all been there, but you're here to learn. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't necessarily need to be an expert. Like, no one's really, let's be real, no one's really an expert. You could be doing the job for 100 years. You'd be close to an expert, but what really is an expert? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's those little bits of recognition along the way that, to me, I in my younger years went out looking for those pieces of recognition because they gave me more confidence. And it was nothing more. I wasn't looking for a round of applause and
Yeah.
handshake. I was looking just literally for me saying the right thing that I knew was the right thing. And then my MD looking over, just giving me that nod of approval.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, fine. Okay, I'll do
Yeah.
that some more. Do it on repeat.
Yeah.
What else can I add in to get more of those nods? And it's just those little things that I think you want someone to come in and day one be really confident. Those people are few and far between. If someone comes in day one and they are just exuding confidence, they're probably a bit of a bullshitter, in all honesty.
Yeah.
It's those people that get the confidence through practicing. Yes, in their own time, learn about the market where they can, certainly helps. But it is about practicing, doing it on repeats, being confident enough in yourself. Okay, this might be a stupid question to ask a client or candidate who's your best source of information rather than any of us internally. But I'm going to put myself out there. And then you realize it's not a stupid question. Or if you mispronounce some terminology from your industry, think, oh, have I mispronounced that? And then you realize that realistically, no one around you on the sales floor cares. They're focused. They're dealing with their own battles, their own desk.
That's such a good point.
Well, cares.
Yeah. So honestly,
okay, fine.
that point, sorry to jump in, that point, you've just resonated with me so much. My wife used to hate going to the gym with me, right? Whenever we used to go to the gym, there's always like the glass mirrors in front of the squat racks, and we would always do squats and deadlifts together. And she'd hate looking at her reflection, and she would look around and think people are going to look at her because she's got bad form. And there was this one time where we were just working out together, and I said, look around the gym. It was quite busy. It was like 6 o'clock in the evening. I said, look around. How many people are focusing on what other people are doing versus themselves? People are here to sweat and grind. They do not give a crap whether your form is bad. And actually, the likelihood is, I've joined a gym about 6 months ago. It's a bit of a meathead gym, to be honest with you, but you look around, it's intimidating. There's big murals of the Hulk and, all that kind of stuff. Big bodybuilders in that gym, absolute animals. There was one time when I was doing like an incline bench press and I was really struggling. This absolute behemoth of a man come up behind me and was going, push, 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 put it up like that. I looked at him and it was just like, sorry, I saw you struggling a little bit and I thought I'd just be there just in case. I was like, oh my God. I looked at him. My perception was, oh, he might be judging me. But no, it's the same thing in a recruitment office. People think, oh, the other recruiters are going to judge me and blah, blah, blah. By the way, if that is the case, the founder, the managing director, whoever, you need to fix that because that's an awful culture. 90% of the businesses I've worked in, when there's only one person on the phone that's a trainee, doesn't necessarily know their trade, doesn't really know their market, and they're not asking the right questions and stuff, people aren't judging you. People are there to help you. You're part of the team. At least that's how it should be.
Yeah, people should want to see others succeed and should want to bring people up. And I think if there's a culture that's, our culture's been okay, been patchy at times. If there's a culture that is just trying to keep people down, then that's not fun to be in for anyone.
Agreed.
And, if that chap had come up to you in the gym and laid into you about form or something, chances are you would have gone, oh, I'm not going back there. I'm going down the road to another gym.
Yeah. To be fair, I did have one anecdote from about 3 weeks ago. I used to do deadlifts all the time because I do martial arts. It's just so taxing on the body. And I did deadlifts for the first time in like 6 to 9 months. And like I did a lighter weight and it just flew up. And I was like, oh, okay. And I kept on putting plates on and it just kept on flying. I was like, oh my God, I've got much stronger. And then I hit a personal record on 10 reps, really, really heavy for me at least. Completely forgot what it was like the following 3 days. My body was absolutely shot to bits. And then I went to go and do dumbbell bench 2 days after, right? Thinking in my head, deadlifts isn't going to affect my chest. Completely idiotic from my perspective. And I tried the 30s and I normally could do like 10 reps on the first set. I struggled to get 10. And I was like, what the heck is going on? again, I didn't put one and one together. I did the second set. I only managed to do 5, right? It's like, what the heck is going on? And I saw this absolute meathead next to me, just like swinging up, doing rows of like 50-kilo dumbbells. And I thought, this is so up my comfort zone to ask this guy. And I could just see he was just exuding confidence. I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to ask the guy. Tapped him on the shoulder. I was like, sorry to interrupt you, mate. I've got my last set. I'm struggling a little bit. I've got a bit of DOMs from deadlifts. Do you mind just giving us a spot? He's like, yeah, give me 2 minutes, bro. I was like, sweet. He's like, come on, then, let's get him up. And he was one of those guys like, come on, push, don't be a pussy. I was like, oh my God, all right, cool. He helped me. And then when I tried to lift them up, I didn't realize how fatigued I was. I couldn't get the dumbbells up on the third set. And then he put them down and he was like, bro, what is going on? You need to get in the right mindset, get your breath right. Let's go, let's go. I managed 2 or 3 reps, put them down. And he just sat down, got on a knee like a teacher or a dad and was like, right, they're too heavy for you. You need to go and use the machines, go and get some carbs in your system, and just like grilled me, right? And I was like, oh my God. And then he just literally put his hand on my shoulder and was just like, you said you did deadlifts. You said you hit personal best. Mate, you need rest. He's like, you're shattered today. He's like, go home, rest, and go again next week. And I was like, okay, cool. Because I've been going for a little while, like I didn't necessarily mind that. If I was brand new to the gym, to your point, I probably would have been like, all right, I'm probably not going to come back here again.
Yeah.
One thing, by the way, because I mentioned it, I forgot earlier. I'll be honest. At the moment, I've had when you mentioned it, imposter syndrome. I've been having the worst imposter syndrome the past few weeks. Like, been really in my head. I spoke to one of our advisors, and he just laughed and was just like, "Welcome to business, mate. Welcome to entrepreneurialism. Everyone I speak to, that we all suffer with it. How do you deal with it? Like, what are some things that you've learned and stuff over the years that helps you deal with it?"
I think the honest answer to that is it depends on the day of the week
Fair.
and your motivation, your headspace at that time, rather than coming on saying that I've got the secret sauce, that were. Some days you think, I'm going to shy away from that. I'm not, situation may have happened in the day that you maybe don't feel like you're your strongest, your most confident, that you think, oh, okay, maybe I'm going to succumb to that today. And then the next day, you could be, no, okay, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this long enough. I've been practicing my craft, seeing the results of what we've been trying to preach as well. And you feel more confident. And then other times it's just, okay, you've got to fake it till you make it. And the sooner you realize that everybody to a certain extent is winging it, just on different levels, then I think that gives me confidence. I speak to some of our clients that could be some of the world's largest employers in our sector, employ thousands of people across multiple continents. And then you speak to some of the teams in different departments and the way that they're coming to us for support and advice. And I'm thinking, why are you asking us? You guys have got, a real company. We're still trying to fake it to be that. But then it's those little moments that you get from, again, being out in industry, going on client visits, speaking to people, relationships face first, video calls, phone first, that gives you those little snippets and nuggets of confidence to go, wow, okay, someone else is coming to me for advice. And it just allows you to grow in stature, I think.
Yeah, so I like that answer. Yeah, it's a similar thing that I've been told by a few people when I told this story to one of our advisors that the first board meeting we had, not last month, the month before, whenever it was, I was like on the brink of having a panic attack. And my business partner was like, "You're right, mate." And I was like, just the internal dialogue, and I'm very good at keeping it in check, but the voice that was most prominent at that time was saying, "You don't deserve to be here. Like, why have they invested in you? Like, this is mental that you're here in a board meeting with people that have invested hundreds of thousands of pounds into this company. How have you got here? This is crazy." And I said that to my business partner, and he just put his hand on my shoulder and was just like, "You definitely deserve to be here. Like, you've achieved a lot in your career. You'll be fine." I was like, "Okay, cool." Did the board meeting, went fine. And then recently, when I've been speaking to customers and stuff, and talking about the podcast, there's been that voice in the back of my head that's gone like, "How the fuck are you here?" And what you just said actually really resonates, because one of our advisors said, "Mate, everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's probably got that voice. Every recruitment leader you speak to is probably thinking, oh, there's someone else doing it better. How am I here?" And I think that's actually quite a healthy kind of mindset, because I feel like you just don't feel necessarily alone, do you? Like, well, a lot of people feel like this way. It's just, you kind of got to get on with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's similar to the scenario analogy we were talking about the sales role, and that ultimately the other recruiters and people in the team and managers different departments don't really care what you're saying on that call. And some of that you can translate into what we're talking about now, that they want little snippets from you. And I think as leaders, we often try and wear too many hats and think, okay, I need to know finance, marketing, advertising, email marketing, everything else that goes on behind the scenes. But no one's supposed to be good at everything.
Mm.
And I think the real strength is something that, I'm still learning at. Even situation a couple of weeks ago, I'm not good at everything. But actually them being aware of that and then trying to say, okay, well, let's get someone who is better at that than me is real strength. And then, delving a little bit further into, okay, is that genuine imposter syndrome? Is that me not being confident in certain scenarios? Or are there legs to that I need a better structural process of someone with a better skill set or different skill set, different voice than me? And it's so layered and multifaceted, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, look, as you mentioned at the start, you've got international business, and something that comes up in a lot of conversations is how do recruitment businesses get that synergy across various different offices, and especially since post-COVID, where a lot of businesses have transitioned to a hybrid model, people are working from home. There's this conversation I'm hearing a lot at the moment around how do I get my recruiters to follow our process, the correct way of doing things, a framework. But as I mentioned to you before we click record, I think that there's a bit of a happy medium, right? Between having the systemized process, target operating model, but also allowing recruiters to lean into their own unique strengths, that having flair, the freedom and flexibility to kind of work their way. Um, just talk me through a bit, I guess, your journey, because when we first spoke about this, you said you've been through a little bit of a journey around having a bit of a standardized process across international teams. So I guess open up by telling us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think when you get those answers, let me know what they are,
Yeah.
because we haven't got it right by any stretch. But I think what I've learned over the years is making a decision quickly is the best decision. Because if it's wrong, you can pivot and adjust and improve it rather than sitting there and doing nothing. So we're going through that journey at the minute, and interesting. And we've got an offsite meeting next week where we are looking at our structures, our processes. What we want our DNA to be,
Mm,
no matter where our team are working, whether it's US, Australia, UK, or wherever else we expand to in the future. We want to know what our global standards are and what it means to work at GVC. So we haven't got all the answers just yet, but we're going to identify, okay, when this scenario happens, the recruiter does this. Send the CV. We want a phone call before or after, one of the
mm,
two, not just sending things blind. Just little things like that we can try and start building that playbook.
mm,
But where we are at the moment and some of the mistakes that we made that anyone listening, I would really, really encourage not to do. We launched UK 2018, and then we launched in Australia January 2020. Backdrop of what was going to happen a month or two later wasn't ideal,
mm.
but we set up in Australia on a different CRM. I don't know what I was thinking in doing so. I think we were on one in the UK, and then some of the founding team in Australia, you were familiar with a different CRM. So when for ease, we'll give them. So for a number of years, we had the UK team and the Australia team working on two different CRMs. Makes absolutely no sense. Even to this day, we have got the Australia team on a different phone system that we're now trying to unpick to get everyone on standardise, so we can have a plug in and play model on systems providers and everything. Dealing with less service providers be much easier. So it's some of those things. Okay, really nail down what you're going to use, how you're going to use it, and then it's much easier to train and guide the team with one playbook rather than having lots of different silos and people that work different ways. But I think to the point around the standards, it's making sure that you can keep it simple as well. You don't want to give them a Bible that has got 100 pages that nobody's going to read.
Yeah.
You want to keep it simple, and then try and make sure that you're living and breathing it every day. The amount of documents that we've sent out to the team over the years that could be 10 pages long, full of text, that then end up just then being shelved, put in a folder elsewhere, and never referenced. I think if you're going to look at these global standards or standards in your business organization, yes, keep them simple, but then make sure that your leadership team are reinforcing that day in, day out as your behaviors and habits. Otherwise, you've spent however long putting a document together that nobody reads, references, and ends up being a waste of time.
Yeah, I've seen that time and time before where you have like a little training session and objection handling. You get sent the PowerPoint, you get sent a document that just sits in your email inbox forever, or you get like your little bit of paper that you've had through that session that just gets put in your pedestal forever and it's never seen ever again. When I transitioned into L&D from sales, literally on the first day, I got given hundreds of pages of all of their old company's training, their existing training, a company that recently went bust that was quite big, all of their training. And like my first job was to create an academy out of everything they had. This is pre-ADHD diagnosis without the medication. Like being a salesperson with ADHD is fine because you're speaking to people. Being told to now go and review hundreds of documents, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be real painful. But then when I started to observe people in the office, I noticed that everyone had a different way of working, which is fine to an extent. And a question I'm going to ask you is around, what parts can be varied and what parts absolutely cannot. And I remember sat down with my boss and said, we need like a handbook. We need like to your phrase, we need like a Bible where it's really simple and it looks good. It's something that you're happy to have on your desk, not just some bits of A4 paper laminated and clipped together, that you can just go to a page and that is the way that our business qualifies a job. This is the way that we do a cold call. This is the way we deal with objections. And it needs to look and feel cool so that it's on their desk and they can just go to the page 4, right? That's how I deal with X, right? And it took a little bit of a while. The first iteration of it, I'm not lying, it was like this big because every page had like a panel in between to, go to whatever page it was. And there was different iterations. But what we noticed is that people were following a similar type of process and people were doing it, yes, still kind of with a bit of flair and freedom, et cetera, et cetera. But people were pulling jobs the way that they were meant to. People were qualifying candidates the way they were meant to. The part that was really difficult that we did have a part of this in the training handbook, but no one really paid much attention, was how things are added to the CRM. That's where things got really, really sticky, where people would be adding a job to the CRM and it would be, a developer, no salary, no contact, nothing. And I always used to say to consultants, okay, God forbid you get hit by a van tomorrow. How am I going to work that job? Oh, I just go for my emails. Well, I have access to emails. No, I don't. So why is it? Oh, I'll put the JD on there. Oh, the JDs are all the same. Like, where's your job qualification? It needs to be on the front of it. And that, if I'm honest, mate, that was the biggest challenge to kind of shift the culture to make sure that actually things on the CRM the correct way.
Yeah, I think any recruitment agency, regardless of size, maturity, anything, you will sit on demo with the CRM. Okay, yeah, that's amazing. But they probably use such a small fragment of what it can do. And we're no different to that. But I think, everything's got to be in CRM. Old cliche, I was brought up on, it's not on CRM, it didn't happen. It's got to be true. And I think the training part, ongoing training and support, you want the team to take that accountability and that ownership to go and find the answer themselves. And learn, yes, you've got these boundaries, we'd like to do it this way, but you've got a bit of flair in there. You can find a different way to do it to get the same outcomes as long as it's within these parameters. And I think a really important part that I believe we should do, and we haven't done yet, and I'd be interested on your take on this, given your training side as well. I look at different people we've got in the team and think, okay, I know that this individual, if I send him this document, playbook, long email, he's going to read it word for word, make notes, critique it, come back to me, send it to somebody else on the team. They're going to see this email and go, nope, not for me. It doesn't happen. So I think we need to have those, those workbooks or playbooks as, okay, yeah, hard copy that can sit on desk. Perfect. That is always, when they ask a question, okay, what do you think? Have you checked this? So you can go back and it then starts being instilled in their daily habits, but also then an audio version, video version, because people work and take on information in so many different ways.
Yeah.
That we've got to play into that as well these days, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I actually used to go through that on the very first day of all my training academies. I can't remember the name of it, but it's like the different learning styles, like kinesthetic, visual, audio, etc. And largely, most people were a mixture between kinesthetic and visual, or kinesthetic and audio. And I always used to express to people that the reason why I go through this on day one is that if someone's more of an audio learner, then I know that when I'm speaking to you, you're going to be making notes. Some people that they're not as good at listening, I know that you're going to lean more into the role plays, and people that are visual, I used to put videos and stuff, and I try and have a little bit of fun with it and stuff like that. But I think that's also quite important. So look, I think we both agree that like things that can't vary is things like, data entry. To your point, I always got told if it ain't on the CRM, it doesn't exist. And I remember my boss actually docked some of my commission once, and that was a big lesson for me, because I didn't add the candidate to the shortlist. And he said, well, if it's not on by the end of the day, I'm taking 10% of it for me. And I didn't because I was a lazy little git, and he docked the commission and I never did it again. So as much as
Yeah.
that might be seen as a bit old school, it bloody worked. So I definitely think that's one thing that can't vary in terms of like different offices and things like that. But when we talk about, allowing recruiters to have a bit of flair, freedom of expression, give you a very funny anecdote. I got told I laughed too much on the phone to clients. Okay, like, how is that impacting? It was like you don't sound as professional. Turned out actually that I could add humor to my cold calls and to my client meetings and stuff, and that was what worked for me, and 100% didn't work for my colleague. But what about the things that you can say, yes, we've got a playbook, we've got a process that we follow. What are the aspects of the role that you think, okay, fine, people can have a little bit of freedom and flair and flexibility on?
I think it's the way they structure and build conversations, how they will choose to check in. I think the last thing that I'd want to create and be part of is everyone working from a script. It would just be mind-numbingly boring.
Might
I
as well
think,
work in a call
okay,
center, right?
yeah. And I think having this framework, okay, you need to add value here, or you need to listen, you need to extract some information. Fine. If you want to go and talk about holidays, something completely off piece that's got nothing to do with veterinary recruitment, you can do that. You've got the freedom and the trust and autonomy to know how you build relationships, and that's what we're hiring you for. If
Yeah.
it is just about ticking that box, extracting, ticking, making that call for the sake of it, essentially, then we could probably you get some bots somewhere to do that. But we've hired you to be an individual, to add your own spin on it, to create something either similar to what we've got or slightly different. And you've got to have the freedom, and you've got to feel the trust and empowerment to be able to do so.
Mm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's nothing worse, especially for someone like myself, and I know many recruiters that share the kind of attitude that I do, where you're being told to read off of a script or not essentially be yourself. And whenever I've worked in a business where people have said, "Oh, you can't act like that," when it wasn't necessarily like super unprofessional or anything like that, and I'm like, well, now I feel like I'm just not being me. And I feel like candidates and clients especially, can smell it from a mile away when you're acting. How many times have you seen a trainee recruiter put on that classic recruitment professional voice when it's completely not them, right? It's different if you're like, if you've got an accent that's quite difficult to understand or you're using loads of slang, maybe be a little bit more professional. But when you're really not being yourself at all, that's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things in recruitment, you've got to be authentic. And if you're delving into changing your voice, my kids brought me up on that a few years ago. I took a work call, and you sound different on the phone. And I was like, do I really? It's like you listen back, you say, oh, maybe I do a little bit. So then you think, actually, I'm just going to ease into it. And and that's even like I said, 2 or 3 years ago. I've still been doing it 15 years. You're still
Mm.
picking up little bits of feedback like that along the way. But ultimately, what we're doing isn't that deep. It's not serious. We're dealing with people who
Hmm.
set an alarm, getting up, going to work the same as we are. We might as well build genuine relationships rather than, okay, I've got to say this to build this disingenuous basis of a relationship. We might as well go and be authentic and care about what we do, learn about the people we're going to be, we're choosing to go and work with and go looking for day in, day out. Yeah, I think authenticity is really key.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And a nice little segue onto our last topic. When we first spoke, we talked about kind of balancing the AI tools with kind of traditional recruitment fundamentals. I think to your point about authenticity, it's probably never been more important now because if you personalized email outreach 6 or 7 years ago, right? People go, wow, that's a really good email. He's actually looked at my LinkedIn profile. You can create an agent now that can go and look through your last 6 months worth of LinkedIn posts to personalize your outreach. I can go on my CRM right now and go, can you just look through every single call I've had with Adam, right? And bring up anything that we spoke about to help build that relationship. And it'll go, yeah, cool. You spoke about sports day 3 months ago, whatever it was, right? So with the AI revolution that we're still currently in, and who knows where that's going to go, obviously authenticity is absolutely huge. But from your experience as a founder, how have you sort of balanced the input of like AI being everywhere with the more sort of traditional, sales, relationship building fundamentals of recruitment?
Yeah, it's difficult to get the right balance on this at the minute, and there's no right or wrong answer. You know, for the most part, I love AI. Sound a bit like Boris Johnson there at that. Yeah. No, but I think it's fantastic if it's used really well. I think the minute that it starts replacing that human touch and that personal approach, then it's delving into something that is transactional, is disingenuous. And I think to your point there, you see it on some of the LinkedIn messages received that it's like, okay, I see the work you did at whatever company years ago, and you think, okay, you just scraped that. It's not actually genuine. But I think that's got to be delivered face to face or over the phone. It's a talking point rather than, okay, I'm going to try and fake that I've reviewed this person. I think my job title on LinkedIn is, I don't know what it says at the minute, but founder, director,
Founder,
something,
yeah.
both of those words. So you see some of these bots that say, oh, I see your job at founder/director. It's like,
Yeah.
it's automation, it's boring. So it's really difficult, but I think there's definitely a place where it's not going anywhere. But I think that the more the evolution keeps happening, the AI tools will get smarter and better for sure.
Yeah.
But then I think the elements of the human touch and that personal approach, just people in general, are going to be yearning for that more, wanting that connection and that trust. I think trust is the main point because they don't trust what you're receiving at the minute. You never know if it's real, if it's not. I've said to two or three of the team in the business at the minute in the leadership circle that I don't want to receive emails that I perceive to be written by ChatGPT or Claude or whatever these days, because it got to a point that I would go and ask for some advice. I'd get email back, okay, this isn't you. This is ChatGPT or Claude or whoever, and I just don't read it. I wanted a quick answer. Now I've got a really amazing polished email with some fake motivation thrown in there at the end of sentences that just, okay, delete. I don't want it. And if then clients, candidates, whoever are going to be feeling the same. So we've got to use AI. We've got to embrace it, but we've got to embrace it, I feel, to help with job adverts, adjusting CVs, some automation. Okay, we can follow up email, how would you interview, this sort of thing. But then it's all got to be a point that frees up that time for our team to go and speak to people, have more time to get out on the road, meet people face to face, take a client for a coffee, all these things that have been lost over the last few years, knowing that legwork's still being done for you, and it then can propel their desk further forward.
Something a guest of mine a few weeks back, a lady called Elke Holland, said was the best way to look at AI is the smartest research graduate on your desk. That's the way to kind of treat AI. If you're looking at AI to screen your candidates, to follow up with your clients, all that kind of stuff, no, right? A really solid research, like we used to hire research associates when I moved into permanent recruitment that would scrape everything on Zoom Info, Lusher, build you lists, go and scrape internet leads and, qualify candidates that had been on the job boards for several months or candidate regen and stuff, so that essentially by the end of each day, you had a list of leads for you to chase. You had a list of active candidates that were placeable. AI can do that for you, but I have actually seen some recruiters that are utilizing it in a way that is almost the human part. And I think that's where people go wrong, right?
Yeah, I think if CV screening compared against a client's job brief, I think that is ultimately going to lead to retention declining. Increasing. It's just not going to work, because what it will do is the client will put a job brief in saying this is what we're looking for, and it's going to be the HR document of what they're looking for, degree, experience, all the rest of it. It's not going to look at hobbies, interests, and anything that would probably even just delete those in the first place. But those are the parts that allow a relationship to form, allow a hiring manager to go, oh, okay, they're into whatever it is, or they support this football team or rugby team, or they went to travel to this location. And that's a talking point. And that's the human touch that you look to break the ice with. But then an AI screen agent isn't going to pay any attention to to that. They're going to look at, are they suitable experience for this job? Yes, fine, in you go, and it's a transaction. When actually you want that common ground in those interviews, should be part of the dating process. Can we see a relationship forming with this person? If we took that into the dating world, you go, okay, I'm looking for a relationship. This person's interested. Yeah, cool. Doesn't mean you're gonna have compatibility. And I think there is a risk that it starts working against us. Yes, it will help with sourcing, creating lists, but I think there has to be that human element.
Do you know something that I don't really hear many people talk about, and I don't think I've even really spoken about this much on the podcast so far, is I don't know what the correct word is. It's something along the lines of like cognitive decline or something like that. And basically what that is where recruiters are so, or just people in general now, are so overly reliant on AI that even simple things like, I mean, with your amount of experience in your sector, you could look at a CV and in like 30 seconds, you could suss out whether they're right for a role or worth speaking to. Now recruiters that have that are just overly relying on AI to the point now where they're not actually having the critical skills to do everyday things because everything is overly reliant. I need to change a light bulb. I know how to do it. ChatGPT, how do I change this light bulb? And I think that's actually something that probably we're not really speaking a lot about.
Yeah, I agree. It's it can be used really well for learning and deep learning if you've got the time to invest and process that information. But it is also a shortcut. And I reference my son again. He just finished his mocks in year 10, going through his revision in preparation for those. He's like, I've just done my homework in 10 minutes. I'm like, how? I've done it on Chat GPT or something. I'm like, yeah, but you haven't learned anything. So when the exams come, good luck, mate. And I think that sort of thing, yes, it can help us with quick information that ticks a box, but we're not retaining it. And I think if we carry on with that thought process, then we're going to have less information. We're going to speak to less people as well with the phone first. We're going to learn less about our target audience. All these things compound over time that then we're just not as capable and knowledgeable as I think we were.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Awesome, mate. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast. Really enjoyed this chat. As you know, the last question I finish every episode off with is, following today's episode, how can people get 1% better in recruitment?
Yeah, I've thought about this, as I said, more than majority of the other responses, and I'm divided at the minute between two responses. Both do go hand in hand with each other, and when utilised together, I think they are incredibly powerful. So ideally, I'd like to give you a 2% better answer.
Go for it.
First one is, in keeping the theme of topics we discussed today, is pick up the phone. I think you will instantly elevate yourself above the majority of average recruiters out there. It builds confidence, it enhances knowledge, forms relationships, and it will help shape your career. Important part with that is a little caveat, not just to tick a box and make a call for the sake of it. You've got to know what you're doing, and you've making that call, and you've got to embrace it. In a world of messages, emails, AI-generated automation, be a real human looking to make a difference. And then the second part is find a way to be consistent in everything you're doing. I think consistency I see as a real life superpower in all forms of life, particularly in recruitment. If you can pick up the phone first, you can build relationships, you can extract information, deliver well with honesty, integrity, and authenticity for your clients and candidates, and you do that on a consistent basis, then you'll deliver consistent, high-performing results.
Unreal answer. Not just 1%, 2% better. I might rebrand the podcast now, Adam. Cheers. Awesome, mate. Well, once again, thank you very much for coming on. For everyone that's made it this far, thank you very much for tuning into this week's episode. I'll put Adam's LinkedIn bio, so if you want to go and connect with him, you're more than happy to do so. Final thing, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, whatever platform it is. It really helps the show. We've gone over 100 episodes now, which is absolutely mental to think about. So another huge thank you for everyone that's been a part of this journey, including Adam. But that's enough from us today. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode. If you enjoyed, make sure that you like this video. If it's on YouTube, drop us a comment. Make sure you're subscribing and following on Apple, Spotify, whatever platform it is that you tune into this podcast. We have been releasing episodes every single Tuesday since September 2024. So super consistent. Couldn't do it without these phenomenal people that come on the show, and of course you that listen and watch every single week. If you or someone that you know are interested, I'm always looking for more people to come on the show, as long as they have got some passion and some value to offer our industry, in hopes that every episode we of course help people get 1% better in recruitment. And shoot me a DM and we'll get you or whoever it is booked into the show. But thank you again so much for tuning in. Really appreciate all the support, and we'll see you next week.